everybody, to another episode of the Smile podcast. Today with me is my good friend Ian Madrid. He is the founder of SP Madrid, one of the biggest, if not the biggest collection company in the Philippines. And I'm super excited to have you on the podcast. Just a disclosure here on the side, Ian and we have a lot of common ideas. And so I'm super excited to have you here on the podcast because I think you're truly one of the innovative minds in the Philippines, not just in the startup community, but also in Fintech. So I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome to the Smile podcast, Ian.
Wow, thanks for the introduction, Jerome. It was more than I expected. It was a great introduction. And thank you for having me. And I'd like to say hello first to the entire Smile community. Right now and currently later on, once the entire movement grows here in the Philippines and hopefully beyond.
Yeah, fantastic. So I would like to start off with perhaps you can just give a little bit of an introduction about your business. So you're really a self-made, bootstrapped founder of a company that you started 15 years ago, and literally from just a very humble, small legal company, and now into an empire of over 1,300 employees across the whole country. Tell us about the story. How did you come to be the founder of SP Madrid?
Okay, well, good question. And the story is very simple. We got lucky. I guess that's it. No, just kidding. Well, we started way back 15 years ago, but obviously for anybody sharing their own story, everything can happen in a blink of an eye. Like everything just happened just the other day. We never thought so I'd like to start by really saying that we got lucky because originally personally, just to have a little bit of context about the story, my background is in engineering. I'm a registered civil engineer of the Philippines, but somewhere 2 years doing it, there's really this entrepreneurial itch. But the thing is, like, I've always envisioned of really doing something of my own ever since, like, ever since I was a kid. But the challenge is that growing up and then meeting different people, the first time I met a lot of people from different walks of life here in the Philippines, it's when I went into college. So you get to see a lot of different nationals, not necessarily foreigners, but basically not just the Filipino race, but Filipino Chinese. And as we know, here in the Philippines, most of the strongest entrepreneurs here in the Philippines are Filipino Chinese born kids. So you get to hear about businesses with them, and like just looking internally for me and my background and my family, we're not really a family of entrepreneurs. My father is a lawyer by profession, and my mother is a corporate CPA, accountant for different companies. And those were basically their background. And most of the entrepreneurs we know right now, they pick up most of their skill set coming from their parents, right? That's like the average that's the average success story of some of the entrepreneurs that we see here in the Philippines. And mostly this is mainly traditionally dominated type of business landscapes. So a little bit of intro about myself. So we started with nothing, no knowledge, no background, and not even without any money. So it was basically, we have to ground ourselves somewhere at the very start. And for us, I'd like to start it with having a very good family behind me. That's the first and foremost. And basically having that as the very foundation. I think the second asset that we only had at that time was humility. And then we just kind of figured everything from there. So again, going back to the question, very success is really going back to being lucky, because we just stumbled upon being in the collection industry. It could have been in any industry, but right now, looking back in hindsight, I feel that this is the perfect industry, and it was not at the point that we get to choose our industry. I feel it was the industry that chose us and the universe at that point in time. And yeah, so I guess we got lucky as well.
Can you maybe guide us a little bit through the first point when you, like 15 years ago, or perhaps it was not 15 but 13 years ago, when you really came to that point when you see, wow, this is going to be a huge business? What was the turning point? What was the one big change that led to the change from being a pure legal company and really that gave you the insight of this is going to become big?
Good. Actually, this is going to be very deep. That's a very good question. For the first year, it was not really about thinking of the industry. It was just basically surviving. It was like a hand-to-mouth type of business survival. Of course, it's hard to share now, and it's kind of cringy. But at the start, it was very common in the industry to pay people below the minimum wage. And I mean, seeing everybody doing the same thing, it would have been very easy for us to just copy what everyone's doing, even the market leaders at that time. Just copy it, and hopefully we find our own success. It was like a lot of juggling between trying to make everything towards the advantage of the company, but losing some good people, or try to make it in favor too much of the employees, and basically make the business suffer for the short-term, midterm, and hope and there would be no long-term situations for us at that time. So for the first year, it was just basically surviving, not really thinking too much about anything, trying to convince people as much as possible to stay and sharing with them the vision, and just believing that whatever we're doing would bear fruits later on, like just a couple of years from now. So we're not really thinking about like 5 years, 10 years. We're just thinking of like surviving for the next quarter, for the next year. Turning point, going back to your question, turning point for us was that, would you believe, like for the first 4 or 5 years, everything was still break even. I mean, we were still contemplating at any given time the business could just close down. The only thing that kept us going are the people that I kind of convinced too much to stay. So it was the business was not anymore about collections or even our clients. It was just basically serving our employees the best that I can and provide them like a future just for the next month. I couldn't even say future for so many years after that. It was just like just not failing them, the promises that I've given and the commitments they've given back.
That's amazing. I feel that this is kind of like a red line that, some sort of like a guiding principle that I've heard time and again from entrepreneurs to say, the rule for a successful business is simply don't die, right? And everything else will compound over time, yes. Which basically is sound principles, treating the people well that you work with, and have kind of like an honest discussion about what the business is about. Take people by the hand. And what I also hear is just I like the idea of having sound family background in terms of having a healthy family relationship that have your back, so to say. Seems also to be kind of like a common and returning theme that I see in successful entrepreneurs. It's super interesting. But what I would like to ask, because since I visited you in your office in Manila, and I was really blown away by a couple of things. So let me go into them one by one. Okay. Perhaps what most of the audience is interested in is technology, right? What role does technology play in the collection business? And perhaps you can also, for the audience that are not so familiar exactly with what collection is, give a little bit of a context.
Sure,
Who are the customers? What are you doing? What exactly is it? And then dive into the technology and why do you do things better than other traditional collection companies?
Okay, got it. Well, first, for the collection industry, and just to clarify what we do, and to possibly the next customer that's looking for us. Our customers we are in the B2B business. So we're still like outsourcing BPO collection service provider for most of the financial institutions in the Philippines, mainly banks and some financial under the financial services category. We would love to be in the entire BFSI category, but right now the target's just to be banking and financial services. It's very simple basically. So for this would be not our customer segment. We do the collections for our lenders, for the lenders here in the Philippines in general. Our clients are mostly, or maybe all of the banks in the Philippines, including some government agencies that are into housing loans. And our value proposition in the entire ecosystem of banking services and outsourcing services is that ultimately we help lenders improve their non-performing loans through mainly doing collections. The entire service spectrum currently that we're doing is telephone collections, field collections, legal collections. So that's basically the entire bread and butter, or the main line of services that we offer to our lenders, our banking clients, and some financial services. But lately, we are also offering, lately because of the demand and the relationship, we're also offering some outsourcing services, which falls under the underwriting, loan origination part of the banks, which we are doing the credit investigation. And maybe to easily identify ourselves between, the lenders, the fintech, the systems provider, we are in the human capital business. We are just putting so much technology on top of it, but we don't want to miscommunicate with our lenders and with other competitors in the market that we are not in any way, shape, or form in the technology business. We are a human capital driven business. So human capital business, nationwide coverage. We set up physical office locations all over the country. At this point, we are already like 15,000 square meters in total office space. 500 fieldmen working all over the country. And then obviously, contact center workforce can operate as a remote workforce anywhere in the country. But some of our clients wants us also to be physically located, maybe for communication, just to manage the communication issues with the clients, and also in some cases for them to visit physically our offices. So yeah, so those are the entire. It's highly traditional. We're just using a lot of technology, social media, and different platforms to put our own flavor and to make us really highly competitively advantaged compared to our competitors, obviously, and obviously to to drive a lot of efficiency in our operations. So it's a little bit long, but that's what we do.
Now, what I've seen one of the things that I saw when I visited your office was, first of all, it looks like a startup. It looks like WeWork, but again, with your own flavor. We're gonna go into that in a little bit. But what I felt was the culture and some of the things that I have seen in other collection companies. Now, that really resonated with me is that the respect for the customer is there. So collection by its nature is you have to remind somebody that they have to repay their loan, and often people just forget it. So friendly reminder is kind of at the essence. I think this is also something that I have seen in other companies. For instance, in China, very big and successful collection companies that do this. That you see posters, for instance, hanging in the office spaces that remind everybody that the focus of the attention is the customer and the end user, and the quality of the relationship between the end user and your client, so the bank and their borrower, right? So if you do collection, I feel that this is something that is really essential, that in a somewhat awkward setting where you have to remind somebody that they have to repay their loan, that between these, what you said, that this is a human business, it's human capital, meaning that the relationship between the caller and the person who's being called on the phone is on a very professional and respectful level. So I really felt this immediately when we started our discussion or the office tour. Can you maybe tell me a little bit about culture at SP Madrid with this in context, what I just mentioned, and how you develop this, perhaps also what you have learned in family relationships when it comes to respect, when it comes to how do you treat your employees. I feel that this is something that really reflects in how your employees ultimately treat your customers.
Yeah. Sorry. So the question would be,
explain the culture of SP Madrid.
Okay. Yeah, that's a tough one. Good question. Tough one. Yeah, it's fine. I'd love to talk about it, but whenever I'm trying to think about the culture, and someone would ask me about the same thing, I can basically I could start off from any angle that I can think of because it's coming from so many directions, and I just couldn't pick any single point of our entire existence with SP Madrid. That's just like the single reason as a driving force of our culture. I could easily say at the start or even before. I could even talk about families, our relationship, or I can even talk about a little bit about my mother's political family background, about constantly helping people in the province. So those are like really
up to you where to start.
Very deep inside me. And it really plays a powerful influence and roles in my life. But anyway, maybe I'll start with here's the again, to create a context of the story. So we have to start with the Philippines. Obviously, I'm a Filipino. I'm living in the Philippines. I've been here, born, raised, and I really understand everything from different levels of the country. And I really don't want to pretend in any way, shape, or form that. I mean, it's hard to say anything online right now, but the Philippines is a very tough country to live in because of so many reasons. But just to consider like having a very good, stable financial lifestyle here in the Philippines, obviously it's very difficult because you just have to look at the GDP. The numbers just speak for themselves, right? Even in Southeast Asia, I remember my professor in college. He was talking about, before we graduated, he was saying like Vietnam went through like 2 wars like just recently, and then they're on track to overtake us, and everybody was laughing at my professor at that time. And then look at where Vietnam is right now, right? Even Indonesia. So it's kind of like, and there's this saying before on, I forgot like which magazine was that, but maybe Newsweek, like we are the sick man of Asia. So, and that's also one of the main reasons that like the reality is that there's a lot of professionals and parents leaving the Philippines just to get a better income somewhere else and bring it back here in the Philippines. So I mean, you kind of like internalize all of that, and when you're trying to see how you're going to do business in the Philippines, automatically you'd see that this is going to be a very hard, tough battle, not only just to survive in the landscape that where we are now, but more so survive here in the economy of the Philippines. So culture starts with, we started by having employees coming from the worst financial backgrounds, just to put it simply, not necessarily family backgrounds, but just worst family financial family situational backgrounds. I'm not sure if I'm saying that properly. They came from the province, third-class municipalities, and the main reason we're getting workforce from that area. It's also because that's where my mother came from. It's the same area where my mother came from, so it was like giving back. Let's go there, look for people, hire them, and then sit them in the office here in Metro Manila. But of course, we're not also blessed with the right kind of industry and business. This is a no cure, no pay business. Profit margins is very hard. So like, how would you give something that you don't have, right? Even for us, the family is not even well off at that time. So you have to find a way, a common ground for everybody just to survive. And culture is at the very heart of it, because at that time, I mean, going back, the only thing that I can share of is that I came from a very good family. And sometimes life in the Philippines, whenever these kids are coming from hard situations, it's also hard to create a very strong and highly knitted family, like because they also have to educate themselves, and when they're living like farmers, tricycle drivers, it's hard to set a time, like just educate themselves and really create that internal family culture of theirs. So there's also a lot of dysfunctional families in the poverty section of the Philippines. So starting off, we just started there. So that's already the cue at the very start of our culture. We want to educate these kids not only to have a good life, earn money, earn income here in Metro Manila, but at the same time, start their family right. Like project the family that I have, share it with them, share the lessons and everything. And, just really put a lot of love in let them know that you could easily get the same income from another company, maybe, but you'll never get the lessons of just being a good person, create a good family for yourself, be focused, stabilize everything, be humble for the next 10 years, hopefully. And then be better than where you started compared to somebody else who didn't find SP Madrid at the very start. So, honestly speaking, that's how we kind of frame everything to create this culture that we already have right now.
Absolutely amazing. And I love the last part of being humble, because I see this with other entrepreneurs. I think probably a couple of things is maybe Mark Zuckerberg is not the best example, but he's a relatively humble guy. If we look about it, he's
I've been following him,
and I think it stays with people. Just Elon Musk as well. He lives in a very, very small house that is ready-made, and if you stay humble for the 10 years that you mentioned and you go to success, you realize it has been something that served you well for the longest time, and you just stick with it. So you rarely see successful entrepreneurs that are resourceful, that all of a sudden change their mind and really go crazy on consumption. That's interesting. And to summarize also what you just said, I find it great that taking the humble backgrounds as a guiding principle, because this can also be very helpful in communication for all of the employees and showing the perspective. I just went and did some research on the site, what you just mentioned in terms of GDP, just for the audience here. We are having in 2021, which is the latest that I could find on Google, a GDP per capita of 3,756 for Vietnam, and for the Philippines 3,460 for the same year. So essentially already slightly taken over. The takeover from the data that I can find on Google has taken place in 2019. So the trajectory of both countries, I have to say, in favor of the Philippines, has been very steep since the early 2000s. So they're both considered to be fast growing. Just Vietnam has taken over the Philippines lately. I think one of the aspects could probably be that there is a mass exodus of manufacturing companies from parts of China that really fuel the growth additionally in Vietnam. So back to SP Madrid and the company culture, where we put a check mark on. What I found also very interesting is your thoughts on, and I'm going into a different direction, but
sure.
Maybe we take this as a metaphor for running a business. What are your thoughts on business furniture? Please.
Business
Ian,
furniture.
Go.
Business furniture. Okay, can you be a little bit more specific? Because I'm totally into, well, in a way, a hobby of mine, doing furniture here in the office, but specifically like to sell.
So what I specifically realized about how you run your business when I was going through the company was you build everything yourself, and everything has a design thinking in it. It's functional, it's economical. It is, it has all the benefits. It has scalability. It has modularity, if that is a word. And so all of these things are built with growth in mind. And maybe you can expand a little bit on how what you were thinking.
Got
and
it.
you design. Am I right? You designed them yourself,
Yeah,
right? Or
yeah,
you were integral part of the design of your office furniture. Just tell me everything about it, because I think for the audience and for the entrepreneurs in the audience, this is really this is something that you have to. It shows how somebody thinks about a business when they design their own office furniture. So that's what I mean when I say go and tell us about office furniture.
Got it. Yeah. So here's the thing with doing business in the Philippines. Ultimately, it's just basically doing business in the Philippines, and also the magic of maybe the internet. In a way, like we are already an internet. We grew in an internet generation, right? Not so much compared to the generation now, but YouTube is mainly has been a very influential part of our lives. So imagine without internet, I'd be very satisfied just seeing the ceiling of what things can be if the only perspective and worldview that I have is only here in the Philippines. But thankfully, with the power of internet, technology, YouTube, and all that, you get to see how people do it in other parts of the world, and you get to compare with the resources and the implementations that we can do here in the Philippines. So I started off right there. Well, first and foremost, my background is in civil engineering, but that's not really the reason I'm into designing furnitures. It's also kind of like, I mean, I'm thankful that I don't know where I acquired this, but ever since I was a kid, I used to run to the hardware store. We didn't have Wilcon at that time, like a super market for hardware stuff. I just kind of like the idea of looking at the, let's say, construction carpentry as a form of play. And then I get to Photoshop. I just taught myself Photoshop just for me to take a picture of the house, and then layer so many parts of the front of the house, change the colors, and propose it to my mother that I want the color of the house to be looking like this. And then I even went to the hardware store, pick up the paint, and work with the people doing the paint job of the house to paint like this is the right color, and don't go over to this part, this would be a different color. And I did that at the age of I forget, 16, 17. I forgot, but I was already driving at that time, maybe 18, because here in the Philippines you get to drive. I taught myself to drive at the age of 12 within the subdivision only. I was taking the car first. It was like I was playing basketball. Sorry, a little bit of side story. I was playing basketball with the driver of another house. We kind of got close. So every day he's like the owner of the house, and the car would be living somewhere for a long period of time. So after playing basketball, I asked the driver of that car, to teach me how to drive. So I was driving within the subdivision for when I was still 12 years old. And I was taking the car outside, even without any license, for the first 2 years before I even got my license. So when I got my license, it was a dream come true. So those are my simple background. So anyway, so I started there. So when we were doing when we started the office, obviously you see this so many things that can happen and what you can do over the internet, like going back to YouTube. But you can only implement so much here in the Philippines, and efficiency is not really a strong nature of some of the businesses here. Logistics, supply chain, we're always lacking on certain materials, so you only get to do business this much. So if you'd be highly reliant on local service providers, product suppliers here in the Philippines, it would be very hard to imagine something very big, beautiful, creative, because you couldn't find the solution here. So we have to build the tools ourselves. We have to build the tools ourselves to make it happen. So for the tables, since I already have little bit of background working with construction workers, doing renovations at our place, so I already have that relationships with them. So it was just non-stop iteration. let's say doing the tables. Just the other day, one of the another banking client, head of one big bank here in the Philippines, just came over, showed him everything, even the tables. So every time I point at one table, I'd say that table is 28 inches by 56 inches, 1.5 inches thick with a tubular of 2 inches. And how do you know that? Well, I basically designed it because, and he was saying, why not this much? Why not this this short? Because if you double that conference table, it would be too long for one conference room. And then if you lessen the length a little bit, it would be weird for two people sitting together if it's just one piece. So I'm making everything modularized. So there's a lot of design intention behind it. And it's not really hard at this point because I've been doing this ever since I was a kid. But yeah, going back to your question, even with the bricks, the tables, well, the chairs, we can't build them here. How I wish we could. We source them directly to China. Taught myself a little bit of Chinese on how to bargain a little bit in China, in Chinese. So I don't need to get that interpreter because that would be a 3%, 5% service fee on top of the transaction. Yeah, even for the lighting, and plus all the thousands of Pinterest that I've been looking at every day, just seeing how I wish I could build something like this. And obviously, if you go back to the same scenario that things are inefficient here in the Philippines, we lack the right kind of supply and expensive. So you'd go back, even if it's not, because like as an entrepreneur, Jerome, you know that it's unconventional for entrepreneurs to be going out of their core competencies, right? You have to be laser focused. But again, you just can't. Again, we're here. It's not like I'm in Silicon Valley, I'm in Shanghai or in Singapore. We are here, so you have to find a way to make things work at this level at the cheapest possible price. So I have a saying, the Madrid way: if you give me a peso, I'm not gonna spend it on a peso type of equivalent product. I have to make it 1,000 pesos. I mean, I just can't function if you're giving me a resource and I'm just going to return it to you at the same value.
Absolutely amazing. Just for the audience to give a little bit of a comparison here, or not a comparison, but to what extent Ian is driving this philosophy. When I looked at the office tables, the drawers of the office tables don't have a handle; they have a hole. You can just put your finger into the hole and pull the drawer out. And also the doors of the I hope I don't give too much away from your IP.
Sure, go ahead. No problem. There's no IP in this one. I'm not in the furniture business.
It really stuck with me. If you want to buy officeware from Ian, you know where to get it. Just contact SP Madrid. It's one of the best officeware that I've seen, and I'm sure you can build it at scale. Not that this is your core business, but even the doors that are under the table, they have a slight angle. So they do not open on their own because they don't have a magnet. You know, the magnet that you have on an office door, you don't need a magnet if you have a slight angle, right? And so these kind of like thought that goes into the process by design to keep it light, cheap, scalable, and enduring as well. The lesser parts you have, the less can break. Is a fantastic philosophy. I really love it. And I think it is a great representation of how to run a business. What I have heard from Elon Musk is the best part is no part. If you don't need it, why build it in?
Yes,
right?
That's correct. That's correct.
It's a fantastic analogy of how the Americans and the Russians in the space race in the 50s and 60s solved the pen problem. Don't know if you heard about it, but the Americans invested $1 million to build a ball pen that can work in space, because usually a ball pen, you know that when you put it into no gravity or you try to write on something on the top, the liquid won't come out and the ball pen won't work. So I spent $1 million to do that. The you know how the Russians solved the problem?
Pencil?
It's just as simple as it is, right? So nobody was dying from any fumes or any pencil residue that was flying through zero gravity, and they just solved it in that way, which I find is a fantastic way.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. So we talked a lot about culture and technology as well. Let's talk a little bit about the future, right? So the future about collection. We've been talking about AI. We've been talking about ChatGPT in the context of collection call centers, right? I think it's kind of like a lot of people think that this is a no-brainer. I think you have a lot of experience in the industry, and you have kind of like a somewhat different view about the topic. Maybe share your view about, you know, specifically in the fintech related, or in the collection related space, and what AI will do with your industry in the future.
Okay. Well, definitely technology, AI has been a very interesting topic for the past 5 years, I guess, but no one has really productized it any better than, ChatGPT, right? Everybody's like talking about AI right now, but the implementation before was really just for a lot of B2B consumption for these, developers to sell to other, top software developers, and, implement AI in that way. Combination of social platforms, internet companies, and some softwares. So in a way, I'm just trying to share my own thoughts, but in no way that I am like any expert in this field. We're just trying to see how it can affect us, and ultimately just navigate the company towards that direction. And again, survive. I mean, everything's just survival for us, right? So it's not simply, even though we've already reached this scale, I kind of got used to that. There's always that part of my lizard brain that I have to go back and, find that next 5-10 years of survival. And, there's always constant threats all over the world, not only for AI. I mean, there's like, everyone's talking about war. 2-3 years ago, we had a pandemic. So it was like you just have to be on your toes and make sure that we call them Madrid nation. So it's like a nation within Philippines, that we have to create our own country nation so that we can survive as one, what do you call that? As nation. So anyway, going back to AI. Yeah, for the fintech, definitely it will be impacted by AI. That's and we're doing a lot of our own AI R&D and innovation ourselves, not just to say, just to give you a buzzword, but we've been working on a few AI projects recently, and it's hard to implement these AI tools in our market segment, namely the banks, because when you say AI, there's so much negative connotation about it in the media, right? That it's just going to do something what happened in the movies, and it's going to take control of everything. So when we do AI here, most of our implementation are towards our employees, not necessarily towards the business processes, because that would require so many compliances and regulations. For us, the AI that we are currently doing right now would be AI for training. So we're leveraging on ChatGPT and speech-to-text analysis of certain AI tools. So the idea would be in real time. So here's the idea. We're always talking about limitation of resources here in the Philippines, and trying to cut on cost. So imagine if you have like and if we need to hyperscale, and we have like hundreds of agents coming in, it's hard to teach them on a one-to-one basis. And even if you put them online, it's hard for anybody to do their own repetition so we call them reps. So reps of just role playing with their script, and just for them to get familiarized with the words, construct the sentences in their head, and then hopefully become productive like within the next 3 to 6 months. So what we're doing right now, instead of having so many trainers, and we don't have many, and even the trainers themselves, even if we hire them, it's hard to teach someone the skill set of how to become really good in collections and negotiations. So what we did, we fed in one. So we created our own large language model in a separate server, and then created our own data sets. And then we converted the entire training manual through the years, and a lot of recordings that we already have, converted them from speech to text, and then created a data set for it, and then fed it into a large language model. So ultimately, there's this, so we can create a prompt behind it, and then this agent would be talking over the phone in real time. But currently, our current version would be the the role play would be through a text currently, saying in Tagalog, not in English. So it's even they're talking in Filipino language, Tagalog, saying let's say the opening line, whatever, and then the entire script, and you can really see that it's a very close simulation of a human person doing the same role play. And that's entirely different. That's the power of AI and technology by itself, because you can do a repetitive, even 24 hours a day, even in their own houses, that they can do their own reps of doing negotiations without being dependent and just listening on trainings without really practicing how to say it and speak it and construct it in their heads. So that's one strong part of AI. Well, I have four more, but I don't want to consume too much of the time.
Amazing. It is super interesting. It's great to see these applications, and specifically for us as an API company, to see that APIs are more and more leveraged also by Filipino companies, right? So we said what you just mentioned is it is hard to get a product in a fast and efficient way. And I think the building blocks that are a professional service capsulated and then fed into another service via an API, where this other service does not necessarily know anything about about how the product is built, and it's just provided to you through an API. It's incredibly fascinating notion, and I really like the idea. And yeah, it's great to see that you are leveraging it for education, your staff, and yeah, certainly also needed with the amount of people that you hire on a daily basis. I would like to close perhaps with a little bit of a personal notion about the day or a day in the life of Ian Madrid. What is like a typical routine? How do you keep sane? What is the routine, and like getting up and how do you keep an innovative mindset? Do you listen to a lot of podcasts, or do you meditate, or you do sports, you travel, you spend obviously time with the family, as I know. So explain a little bit. And
okay.
Thanks.
So a little bit of background again, because to build context. I have 5 kids. I got married at a very young age, had a child at a very young age. So I guess that would be the starting point of crazy, like a lot of roller coaster ups and downs at a very young age. So I got married at the age of 22, maybe early for some, maybe not. And then last kid was born during, so I had a pandemic baby, to put it simply. So I have 5 kids in total, 4 boys, 1 girl, and basically they're the ones that's like really I don't know how to say if it's motivation or not, because some families have like the same kids or even more, but doesn't have the necessary drive to do great strong work, I mean here in the Philippines or somewhere else. But I guess if lifestyle we're just going to be talking about lifestyle, I don't know, because I grew up like very similar. I don't want to say that I'm highly different right now compared to everybody else. I'm just like habits just kind of stuck through the years, the right kind of habit. Again, I'd be going back to family, because the building blocks of at least having the right fundamentals of being a good person, just being a good person, starts with family. So that would be the starting point. And obviously, like when I was about to graduate college, I was thinking to myself, oh, I'm gonna really party hard, because I took up civil engineering, which was really hard. I spent so many countless nights studying. Even for the thesis by itself, I was like not sleeping. It's very common for me to not get any sleep, and that's basically where I kind of picked up the attitude of I could really push myself really hard to get something done, deliver it, whatever, even if it's like the odds are stacked against you. I can always find a way to make it happen. And time again, it has always been manifesting in my life ever since when I was in college. So after college, I said to myself, oh, I'm gonna really party hard after the board exam as well. I'm just gonna enjoy my life, single life. and all that. Not necessarily single. I was with my girlfriend that time, which is my wife now. And then all of a sudden, we had a baby. And then the thing that I want to enjoy, and like it never happened. So I even tell my kids that, the first money I earned was from my internship. So we call it an OJT here in the Philippines, on the job training internship. And that first money was spent on an ultrasound.
Oh.
So I never got to enjoy my own money. So even until now, even let's say I have the surplus, excess money, thankfully, it never stuck to me that my money is my money. It's basically other people's money. Not investors' money, OPM, but other people's money, like my kids, preparing them for something better in life, or also my employees, which I also consider my kids. So always setting something away from myself, from my greedy self, and then it's supposed to be for everyone's money. So I'm not sure if that's a helpful backstory, but my lifestyle mainly is about just devoted to being to other people. And sometimes I joke with my wife, the only silence that I get in my life is whenever I step inside a bathroom. Because here in our office, if you see it, it's like humans all over the place, right?
That's true.
And then when I get home, it's also humans all over the place.
It's true.
There's no moment of silence. And maybe it's like I just kind of got used to it. So going back, you talk about meditation, exercise, sports, and I was really into a lot of self-help back then. And back then those were like gold whenever you get to pick up a good book, because internet was not that much as a source of a lot of information in terms of improving yourself. So I was just like picking up books here and there, a little bit of story, a lot of stories. At one point in my struggling years, because we started SP Madrid around 2008. I graduated 2002. So I worked for a geothermal company as a civil engineer for the first 2 years. And everything else in between was kind of like a blur, because I was like trying to do selling, online selling, network marketing selling, whatever. Like I was just trying to teach myself real estate selling, door-to-door selling, online selling, whatever that I can sell, I was just trying to sell. And I was having that constant quarrel fights with my parents and my wife, because you're throwing your life away. You're a civil engineering from a good school, and how come you're doing whatever you're doing on the side? And it was I was I had high convictions that I can make it, even though I don't know what I was doing at that time. I knew that I'm one way or another, I'm just gonna make it. So 2008 was a starting point of SP.
The foolish confidence that you can't fail is probably essential for the founding of many companies.
Maybe I was just crazy at that time. So imagine 2003, 2002. So I worked for 2 years, 2004, 2008. I was like struggling really, really hard. And I had kids, mind you. Like I think my third child was born on 2008. We started SP Madrid, and all the way until the 4th year, we were still struggling. So I was like struggling for almost a decade, and I was really questioning myself time and time again. And the thing is, like, I already burned a lot of bridges going back to my profession. It wouldn't make any sense for me to start back all over again. So I just had to make it work. I just had to make it work. So again, going back to families, keeping myself grounded with the right kind of values I picked up from my families. A lot of self-help books help, a lot of tapes, whatever I can pick on. So there's a story that I want to share. So if you're familiar with Fully Booked, have you seen one here in the Philippines?
I'm sorry.
Fully Booked store. Fully Booked store.
Perhaps not yet.
So when you say bookstore in the Philippines, every Filipino would say national bookstore. And when you enter national bookstore, it's not like, what's the equivalent in the US of a bookstore, of a good bookstore, like a brick and mortar bookstore?
Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, Barnes and Noble. So it's not like Barnes and Noble. It's basically a bookstore, but when you go, it's school supplies. They're known for like being the #1 school supply store here in the Philippines. there's very little of anything about business and self-help books. So that's the environment where we grew up in. Then Fully Booked came out, and when you step inside of it, of course, it's a wealth of information. But the challenge is that I don't have any money at that time. So I was like teaching myself because and when you go into like typical Filipino bookstore, everything is sealed. You can't read any parts of the book.
Oh, wow.
But when you go to Fully Booked, the books are open. So
Fantastic.
OMG, this is like a wealth of information treasure. And I would during the time that I didn't have any money, whenever I get to pass by any Fully Booked store, I would just open some of the books and try to read as fast as I can. 1 or 2 books, picked up the really good information because no information on the internet. It did come from the school. I don't have any family background about it. So where am I gonna get that information to just to succeed, right? So and then whenever there's this one book that really stuck with me, that I need to buy. I remember the title of the book was it was by Donald Trump. Think Big. Think Big by Donald Trump. So I read the intro. It talked about like thinking big, and he had like a co-author of that book. And the story was really good. And I said to myself, I really need to buy this book. So I checked my ATM. The book was around 800. I only have like 1,000 pesos in my ATM. And I was feeling depressed as well with myself because for the last 10 years, if you have a lot of kids and results are not showing up, you're always kind of like depressed every now and then. But like I just bought that book, and it's kind of like my personality to just gamble on myself, not in a bad way, but just put it on the line if you really believe in what you're doing. So I said like this is so I love telling that story every now and then because it's basically betting on the future, on knowledge and information, just making it work.
Amazing.
I'm sorry if I didn't get to answer your question directly.
No, that's fantastic. Actually, I think we're great in timing, Ian, and these were beautiful closing words. Actually, believe in yourself, work on yourself, read more books. I think that's a learning as well. Perhaps it's not a bad thing if your internet connection is bad. Just use the time to read some more and work on yourself. Become a successful entrepreneur, just like Ian. And thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It was a great pleasure, and I hope to see you soon in the Philippines.
Of course.
See you next time.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks a lot, Ian.
You. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.